These are called owls. The cameras they use. So they true to their name, they turn poop. Yeah, they turn so they can see everything in a 360 degree. Sort of. Yeah. So yeah.
Can we go on Zoom?
We are good on Zoom.
All right, good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:34 PM, a meeting of the Norwich School Board. First up is agenda review. Does a member of the board have an item for agenda review?
I don't know if the public can see it, but there was a non-public item on there, a personnel matter, which has already been resolved, and we don't need an executive session this evening.
Great, thank you very much. Duly noted. Any other items for agenda review? Kay, Neil, do we have any board members who are attending virtually?
No board members, but Robin Steiner is with us, but she
Great.
is already in the panel. So
Wonderful. Would any public participation in board meetings is important? Would any member of the public like to address the board? All right,
anyone online, they can just raise their hand if they want. We've got 3 folks online. And here comes your chair.
all right. Hearing no member of the public wanting to presently address the board, as the chair gets situated, we will hand it over to our presenter this evening. We're going to do an enrichment grant presentation by Sarah Reinheimer, and we are very excited to hear your presentation about Galapagos. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much, and thank you for supporting our schools and supporting our teachers. It's really professional development like this. It was an experience of a lifetime, and I'm excited to share with you tonight. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sarah Reinheimer, and I teach first grade here at Million Cross. This is my 3rd year here, and my 13th year teaching. It's been a while. I've taken a lot of professional development, and this is by far the best professional development I've ever. Keep it short and sweet. I could probably talk for hours about this experience, but I know they're busy people. So I'll talk a little bit about what it is, what my goals were, and what the outcomes were. This is not compatible. So this July, I went to the Galapagos for 10 days with an organization called the Ecology Project. They're based out of Missoula, Montana, and they run programs for educators and for students. Mostly their programs go to Central America, South America, and some in North America. It was 48 hours of learning. So from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, I was engaged and completely saturated with information. We were guided by 2 individuals, Martine, who is a marine biologist, and Laura Dinnerman, who is a educator from the United States, who is working on more of the pedagogical side. Each day we would go out into the field and meet with an expert, and then in the afternoon we would gather back together and apply that information either to science inquiry, going through curriculum the way a student would go through an inquiry process, or we would be looking deeper into pedagogical practices and next generation science standards. So prior to the course, I did about 2 to 3 weeks worth of coursework to kind of lead up to the work we did there. The goal, the overarching goal of this grant and this learning was to deepen my scientific knowledge and my content knowledge. As an educator in primary grades, we study a lot of different things, but some topics, especially science, we don't go into deep learning with. So I took like a basic biology class in college, and that's about it, right? So to really dive deeply into a subject matter and to share that with my students, I felt like I needed a broader base of biology and ecology, and I was wanting to deepen that understanding. So that was one goal. And then the second goal was to just be sparked with curiosity, to develop curriculum that would also ignite my students' passion for learning and get them excited about learning too. In first grade, we study a animal adaptations unit, and so the primary goal going into this was to create a curriculum to bring back and share with the staff here, and ultimately, it would be lovely if I could share it district-wide. As a district, we are also doing a lot of science investigation and development of curriculum. We've been working with Shane at the grade school, and so I spoke with Shane before the trip and just seeing how the information I was getting here would dovetail nicely with what he was also bringing. So that's the what and the goal, and the outcome exceeds my expectations. Each day I met with a biologist, we met with national park rangers, we met with a woman who was doing graduate research on microplastics, unit, so I should say biocontrol, they were looking at invasive species in the area. National park rangers were monitoring tortoises. I met with an individual who was working to, most of the coral reefs have been destroyed in the Galapagos, so he was working on coral reef restoration. And then in the afternoons, we would just take all of that information and synthesize information, but also apply it in ways that we could bring back to the classroom. So I came back with all of this really rich content and information, which I hoped for. I learned so much from this group of women who I was with. Most of them were high school teachers, but they were also doctorates or were really passionate biologists. 2 zoologists were with us too, so I had that experience. And then I have this concrete curriculum to share with my team. And so that, and so I developed a storyline, which is what the district is working towards, developing a storyline. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially just a series of questions that you're hoping to evoke from children. It's a guide for a teacher, but also we're hoping that by giving kids enough like little breadcrumbs, they'll come to that understanding through inquiry-based experiences on their own. And so the storyline and then curriculum to match up with the storyline, and just like so excited too, right? So like already my students are like, so what is the tortoise? And we're already having conversations about the Galapagos. It's day 6 of school. So that's the short and sweet version of this experience. But I really love you to take your at your leisure, look through the slides. I'm happy to answer questions now or later. And still brainstorming ways I can share this with our community.
Jay?
Jay.
Sarah, thanks so much. And what was your number one favorite thing you did over there?
It's so hard to do. Just I mean, working with the tortoises, I think was pretty fantastic. So we walked out of the national park and 97% of the Galapagos is in preserve. And unlike the United States, that preserved land is inaccessible to the public. So it was really a privilege to be able to walk out into this area where these endangered species are living. And we were able to work with them hands-on. We collected data, measured them, weighed them. We put in microchips to track them. And shared that data with the National Park Service.
It sounds so cool.
Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got there in the presentation, if you dig in a little bit, right, you've got this one slide on the next generation science centers. I'm just curious if you could elaborate a little bit on how how did the course, I guess, was sort of directly applicable to some of the stuff that we're doing for NGSS?
Absolutely, yeah. So Vermont has adopted NGSS science standards, and not all states in the United States have. So our school is really working to reevaluate our science curriculum and make sure it's aligned. This particular slide shows one of the first grade standards. So typically, and probably like the way when you were a student, you probably just learned about this, like, first, disciplinary core idea. And so the
I
idea.
actually got to observe the dinosaurs in person.
Nice try. Yeah. So the NGS tries to make this more dynamic experience for children. It's sort of pulling in science, engineering practices and these cross-cutting concepts that will follow up through their whole science career. So following from K to 12. And so this was something that in this specific course, we spent a lot of time dissecting prior to going on the trip. So I was pretty familiar with NGSS before I left, but there were pieces that I picked up that I did not know before. It's really fantastic. Yeah. You asked also about, I know it's not, I'm not gonna touch it. You asked a little bit about, science instruction. So this 5E cycle is something that dovetails really nicely with what the district is doing. And so we're not doing this specifically, but this is an idea that stems from like the work of Dewey. So it's experiential learning. This model is also very similar to the whole learning cycle. So talking about how our brains learn and how children best learn through inquiry. So when you're looking at a storyline, for example, you're really thinking about engaging students with some sort of anchoring phenomena. So for example, I would show them a tortoise and I show them what, this tortoise is walking along, but the food is up high and their bodies are down low. So like, how are they gonna get to the food they need? So I'm showing them that. I'm just asking them what they see, what they observe, and then they're sort of learning to fill out different thought processes. And that's directly correlated to what we've been doing as a district. Then we give the children an opportunity to explore that on their own. Before you're doing any direct teaching, you're really letting them have this immersive learning experiences. So the trip in the Galapagos was allowing me to experience as a learner what that feels like to learn in that way. And so then I'm able to try to replicate that with my students. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
That does.
Okay.
It leads to other questions, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, like I said, I could, Sean said, there.
Participants, so they were, the whole purpose of this was to, it sounds like there's 16 participants and they're all educators, so is that the whole purpose of this? Because obviously a lot of these grants, like sometimes people go do different things, but it sounds like this was really meant for everyone there is a teacher, and this is meant to kind of bring curriculum back into the classroom, so you have something to bring.
Yeah.
So that's what this was, so it was pretty targeted then.
It was very targeted, and it was different than the Monarch trip in the capacity that in the afternoon, we were really digging into pedagogy and really digging into content and developing curriculum and working collaboratively with each other to do that.
Right.
Yes.
And this is, then you bring this back in, is it just kind of for a little unit, or is this something that kind of is sprinkled in throughout the year, or?
Mostly a unit,
Yeah.
right? So it's, this is the conundrum of we have an hour a day to teach science and we have
Right.
all this, we have to cover a bunch of standards. So this ends up being about a month,
Mhm.
a month long. And I'm doing a pretty good job of convincing my team right now that this is a really wonderful way to.
So this would be like a month then of like, I mean, having kids go through this, like, it's like, I don't know, the Chinese project that they do. So this is gonna be like a project that's specific to the Galapagos, and now it's gonna be new, wasn't done before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it will, so the unit that we've been teaching meshes really nicely with it. So the unit we were teaching prior to this was a lot about birds and bird beak adaptations. So looking even at Darwin's finches would really tie right into what we've already been doing. And so then elaborating, so the unit I wrote was focused on tortoises.
Right.
But I mean, I could take it in so many directions. If I change grades, I could take it into my plastic study, I could take it into a marine biology study. I could look at how, the confluence of those weather systems come together at the Galapagos, which make it such a unique place. So there's the potential for building curriculum beyond what I've done already is exponential.
Just two quick comments and a question. One, I thought the slides were great. Two, I know that these enrichment grants are great opportunities, but they also rely on people to take time out of their life and away from their family to go become, more skilled at their craft. And so I really appreciate that you and your colleagues do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then, looking through the slides, I too was really trying to scrutinize the NGSS standards.
Mhm.
And, you made the comment earlier that orange box, the content, when I went to science class 355 years ago, not as long ago as Neil, it was really a lot about the content and probably less about the cross-cutting concepts in those practices. So how much, when you're as an educator, how much content do you give up to emphasize those other things?
I think that is a really big question. I think even with this approach to inquiry, we're giving up at least one unit, which is, we're talking to Shane, it's like, we've got to have a partnership with the grade school, and we've got to decide like, which unit are we willing to like let go so that we can really give room for children to engage in this inquiry and in a really authentic way, move through the material. And I think, when we come back, and it doesn't mean that there's no instruction, right? So like, it's not just giving them these phenomena and exploration opportunities. I think when we explain and we elaborate, those are when we kind of redirect some of those misconceptions or add little pieces. But yeah, it is like, it is a return to what we knew many years ago was like how children learn best, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of returning to some of these old theories that, so having these conversations in more of a Socratic way, those take a lot of time. Whereas I could just regurgitate some information, have you write it down, but are you retaining that information in the best way possible? So yeah,
No, that's really helpful. I think, obviously I don't have your job. I don't have the same training. I have a child who's a 7th grader and a 5th grader, and we talk to them about their experiences. And it seems more experiential and project-based and inquiry-based. So just always trying to wonder like, hey, is the juice worth the squeeze as far as giving up X amount of content for Y amount of process, right?
yeah. And I think the hope there is that they learn to investigate. They learn to ask, like, what do I see? What do I wonder? Could it be this? Let's figure it out. Let's write a claim and say, I think it's this, and then come back to it. And so we're not just giving them content, we're teaching them how to be it.
The turtle unit may help them come out of their shallow scientific. Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
One of those. All right, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
You might just let me into the Zoom when you get a chance to, please, just to make sure no one's got their hand up. Thank you. All right, back over. Thank you for opening the meeting, Michael. We'll move on to our PTO report. I will read doing it. Actually, Leah hopefully it's pronounced right, Fosco. Emailed me and apologized profusely that she is now the new PTO chair and did not realize that the school board meetings were tonight, but quickly gave an update. And unfortunately, it sounds like her Wednesdays are pretty crazy because they've got a child, I believe, who's got some practice tonight and her husband works this night every night. So anyways, I think from here on out, we might, unless you guys want as a board to ask her to have someone else do it. I kind of said it would be okay if she's going to send an email and I could just read the update. At least for now, I really know if there's a better workaround. So anyways, the update is the PTO has so much great news and energy this year. Leah Fosco is chair, Megan Donahue and Mara Child will be vice chair, Ellen Seifert and secretary, and Christine Quillette will be the treasurer. If I have everyone's names pronounced correctly. We plan on continuing the same MCS traditions from last year, mudstone, gift making, etc. Our focus for this year is what we want to make it, is that we want to make it easy for families to participate in PTO events. Reviewing all of our activities through this lens, how can we expand access and streamline They kicked off the year with popsicles on the playground, where we gave all the students and future and former students and families popsicles after the school's open house. Followed it up with a back-to-school breakfast at the gazebo, where they had coffee and breakfast treats for caregivers and their students. Went inside as the first school year began. Both events were a hit, and it was great to see so many families in the middle gathered. The first meeting is October 3rd at 7 p.m. Hoping to do it outside around the fire pit. Also, we're gonna have a table at the back to school night on September 12th. And finally, more information is coming. We'll be sending out welcome emails and kicking off the membership directory drive next week. So if any questions, you can reach PTO at the PTO@gmail.com, and apologize that this email is a bit rushed because she was hanging at the door. So anyways, hopefully if anyone has any questions, please reach out to Leah. And Leah, thank you for putting that overview together. All right, on to the business requiring discussion. First off, we will look at the budget guidelines. We were here 2 weeks ago tonight, and reviewing the budget guidelines. We went through that. Neil, you weren't here at that meeting, and neither are you, Michael. So I don't know if there's any, would like to have any discussion about those. I know at the last meeting, we discussed it a bit and went over the background as far as what the, increase or lack of thereof, and if this was a starting point to guide us into the budget season with the very small increase, actually 0%, zero increase, but a small percentage there. Any comments on that? Yes, still with them, no?
This is gonna be a challenging year.
It's gonna be a challenge.
Not like last year, it wasn't.
You say that every year.
I say that every year.
Is it really gonna be long?
And you've been right many years.
I don't know how to, like, progressively, I mean it more each year. So,
I would say that, if I may, like, I entirely agree with Neil, nothing but hard stuff. I do think in retrospect, you move through life like a rower, you're moving forward, looking backwards. I do think the board did a nice job with the administrative team of taking care of the things that were within our control. Right, whether it be the contracts or trying to do the right thing on facilities. There's just continues to be a lot that is way out of our control. And so just trying to balance those two, but I agree with you, it's gonna be tough. I don't see anything more budget guidelines that are jumping off the page at this point in time.
All right. Let's see, we'll move on to the VSBIT proxy. I did not actually know this is about, received a bit letter in the mail that I did open and save my account there. This might be what's.
so every year coincident with the VSBA, VSA annual conference, both VSBIT and VEHI hold their annual meetings as well too. We have one vote available for those annual meetings. And this is the proxy so that you can designate someone from this board who will vote on our behalf at those meetings. My hint would be to select somebody who plans on attending.
This is for the annual meeting that's up.
October 25th, right? I don't know if I can get off work, so.
This is the 2-day meeting, right?
It's been condensed down to basically a day and a little bit extra. Right. I have registered for that meeting, if that helps.
I mean, I usually go too, just because it is a useful meeting to go to, so.
Are you looking for nominations?
Yeah, it's a,
Friday.
it's
Friday.
Neil, if you're definitely gonna be there, I will almost 100% be there, but.
I will definitely be there.
All right, do we want to have you then be the proxy and,
I am happy to do that.
Thank you.
as far as doing this, do we actually need to send it back to them? Sorry, it looks like.
Thank you.
We need a motion to designate someone as.
I would take a motion this evening designating someone as both the VEHI and the VSBIT.
Should we do that under 7 then?
But I can probably,
Yes.
I think, I need your signature. right?
Yes,
I can
it's
actually
under
sign
F&G.
it, right?
Well, it's a
Okay,
consent
never mind.
agenda, but we're gonna.
The approval. So,
Okay,
So do we need to wait till number 7 and take it out of the consent agenda and have it as separate?
There's already a motion, which just happens to have Neil Adele's name in parentheses. So there is under business requiring action, item F and item G. Motion language there.
But yes, when we get to that point, I would pull F and G out of the consent agenda so that you can use the specific motion language.
okay, so we'll just do it. Okay. All right. One of our bigger topics, any other questions on that? One of our main topics tonight that we added to the agenda, is this item C, which is a discussion here at the board regarding the 6th grade RMS discussion. Maybe I'll just kick it off quickly. Maybe we just quickly set the table on this one. I think it's been something that obviously has been going around and around for quite some time. I did try to look today to see if I could find, and I couldn't find for the life of me what meeting it was at, where there was the someone had over, Jamie or someone had done some calculations. Is that
I did Dresden meeting,
like the
right?
Dresden meeting? And I was looking at the Dresden budget meeting, and I was looking in the past Dresden meetings to try to resurface that, but as I recall, and I'm not sure if Jamie's on, is she on?
I'm on.
So Jamie, do you
That was at it was a Dresden, I think it was a budget committee meeting, and I think it was December, but I can find that for you and post it.
It definitely was also the school board meeting, because I would not have been at a
yeah,
budget
there was a
meeting.
school board meeting.
So
Maybe we just.
Oh, okay,
post-
so it's probably December, when we were discussing the budget, when we rolled it out the first time to show you.
Okay,
I'll go look, okay?
yeah, sorry, Jamie, I meant to email you, but then it was like 5:30, and I was like, oh, you're probably driving, it's not worth the stress, so.
No worries, take a minute.
I believe, Jamie will post it, but I believe as my memory serves, that it was around it was over $1 million.
Yeah.
And again, just to set the table a little bit, I think that originally everyone thought that it was the building could handle, let's just call it 3 sections of 20 kids, so we're talking, we're talking 50 to 60 students. The building should certainly be able to handle that. What we learned though through this process at least was that I believe the study was done that pretty much because the Hanover 6th grade
There you go.
is kept to their own section of the building, that it's not just about looking at the overall building and just saying, sure, it can handle 60 more kids. It would actually require a fairly extensive, which I think everyone found a little bit shocking, but a fairly extensive renovation to a part of the building that would enable the 6th grade to remain on its own over there.
Yeah.
So I think that was the main thing. Obviously, the cost was the big item. And then I think at a subsequent meeting, we also learned from Kari Asmus that there's quite a history with regards to the way that who paid for that RMS school when it was built now 20 years ago. And the fact is we learned, I didn't know that, but it sounds like Norwich actually didn't contribute as much money to the building at the time because Norwich didn't want to have to spend as much. So Hanover basically contributed more to the facility, which obviously people with a long memory in Hanover, do want to remind people of. So anyways, here we are a couple of years later. I think now, really, I think what Dresden is looking for is a decision by the Norwich board to recommend that we want them to, actually take this to the next level as far as performing a more in-depth study if we want to have them focus on that. I think it'd be part of the strategic plan and whatnot. That's the basic background. I think personally, I had moved on from this last year when I saw the numbers and kind of thinking that, how big of a problem is this really? Do we really need to be talking about, even if it was half the cost of what they're estimating, given the fact that we're all trying to keep the budgets extremely tight, and there's all sorts of other things that we need to be focused on in the district with regards to, upgrades both to this building, RMS, and the high school, if this is something that we really need to be worried about at the moment. And frankly, I don't even know if we know from parents, I mean, is this something that, I can see how there's been a lot of, I have talked to parents who say my kid is ready to go over there. There might be some equality issues as far as the RMS school has some more features than MCS. I think there's also probably a group of parents that would be concerned and saying, hey, you know what? I like them being here at MCS for their 6th grade. They're not developmentally ready to be thrown over the river yet into the bigger school. I know there's a lot of good things that go on here with the 6th grade, working with younger kids, but I know that's also been a question for parents as far as, is it appropriate for 6th graders to be moving through a school where there's pre-K as well? So we'll set the table there. We can decide. I think moving out of this tonight, I think we probably should just probably have a vote as far as whether we want to formally propose something when we go back to Dresden to direct them, the Dresden board and the administration to look into this further, I guess, and produce some more thorough analysis if we want to set people down that path. So let's open up for discussion.
Michael was first.
Michael?
Thank you. So I do recall this discussion. I do recall as a board member in this discussion being a little bit prickly. And I was prickly for 2 reasons. One, there were folks who I believe were staff saying, oh, you have to do it the way it's done now, like 6th grade, you'd have to completely reconfigure the building. And I would say that's a policy choice that lies with the school board. Like you could do it this way, you could do it another way. And then I did take exception to the idea that the bond vote in the 2003-2004 school year forever binds the school board as far as who pays for what. And I probably could have phrased my feedback in a more positive way, but I just think I just don't think that's relevant at this point in time. That a board 21 years ago can say, no, Hanover paid for that. Norwich kids cannot have access to it. A lot of that piece of the building may be depreciated by this point, right? And the bond, I assume, is retired. Will people have feelings about that? Sure, but I just think it's a matter of governance. You can't be held hostage to the actions the board took over 2 decades ago. There also, I think as soon as this started to get contentious, I think we do what good people do is like, well, let's send it to a committee. Right? I'm not particularly interested in that. My own personal view, and while I'm sensitive to the fact that we have many challenges to deal with, I do think that 6th grade would benefit from starting at middle school with everybody else instead of being a year behind. And it would open up some intriguing possibilities for the usage of this building. And I'm not so much interested in the study as in, okay, we could do it in the same pedagogical model, if that's the right way to put it. So a larger construction project, or hey, we have to figure out a way to do this smaller one. And I would love to survey parents about it, right? So I would be for trying to get an option A, an option B, or a status quo to see what we're talking about, because I felt like the last discussion was, rushed, and it also struggled with some assumptions about what is and is not possible based on the design of the building, people's preferences, and the idea that Hanover paid for this and now Norwich cannot have access to it. Maybe that'd be persuasive with voters. I happen to think a bunch of those voters have probably turned over the last 20 years or so. Anyways, that's just my opinion. I have no authority without all of you, so I'd be very interested to hear what your opinions are as my colleagues.
Yeah, I think Michael summed up a lot of what I was gonna say, that it feels as if there's kind of 3 components of this. There's the pedagogical component of it. Is this the right thing for 6th graders? Like, is it the best thing for 6th graders on both sides of the river to be together in a building? And then if that is the case, if the answer to that is yes, what does that look like? If the answer to that is no, then this discussion sort of doesn't need to happen. The second part is the budget piece. I think we were all caught off guard by the large amount of money and also sort of the what felt like a shutting down of discussion of how else the building could be used. Since then, I have heard Tim say that they are willing to look at how they might make it work both within the existing building with a smaller project and then with like whatever this big 1-point-something million part was. And to me, I would like to get that information before we make any decisions. I also think we need to get some parent input from both sides of the river. That feels important. Although I do feel, for me, this needs to be led by the pedagogical aspects of it. And just to drill down a little bit on what this might open up for creative use of this building is perhaps the pre-K could be expanded, which we received money to do. And I don't know if there's an offset there. Like, I have no idea what that offset might look like, but perhaps there's some revenue generating things that could happen should some space be freed up. And perhaps not, like Marion Cross is growing, and perhaps if the 6th grade leaves, the kids that are currently here will fill that space. But it just feels like we have a lot of questions unanswered. And to me, it starts with what is best for the kids, and then we go from there.
So it's a great discussion. To me, it's an exciting prospect. It's something that first when I got here, we couldn't say. It was like a taboo subject. And then I remember distinctly when it was first broached publicly, but we are in the process right now of interviewing companies who are going to help us with a capital improvement plan process. That process is going to include community engagement, and there are specific mentions in the request for qualifications around looking at grade configurations, and specifically, I believe you specifically mentioned the idea of gauging the feasibility of this, what would really need to happen, and have a professional architectural firm give us advice along those lines. And so, yeah, the folks 20 years ago who may have an opinion about it, like, may or may not be part of the CIP process, but I think that's an option for us to get some professional help to help us with this decision.
Sorry, just one more point. I think we do have to be careful, because I do remember it got, for the first time in my history on the board of 4 years, it got a little contentious with our colleagues from the other side of the river on this topic. And I think I just would like to be careful not to, not ruin is the wrong word, but to strain too much the relationship we have with our colleagues on the other side. So just a little, if we can figure out a way to have a civil debate.
Ooh, I would just say that, and then we can talk more. I don't think at any time I was uncivil.
No. There was just some tension in the air that we don't normally have. And I feel, I don't mind the tension in the air, but I think we need to figure out in our future discussions, name it and figure out what's going on and try to get to the core of what's causing the tension. Versus just sort of saying, we're not gonna talk about this anymore, which is sort of how it felt.
I just want to say that the feedback from parents that I've heard about this overwhelmingly is wanting to put the 6th graders at RMS, and I'm in agreement with Lisa and Michael on everything else.
Hi. As a parent of a 5th grader and a teacher of 6th graders here, I, yes, think that a school that is more catered to the needs of kids hitting puberty is important. And from the perspective of the librarian, my collection of books that is 6th grade friendly is minuscule. And I think about what the 6th graders at RMS have access to. And it is this collection, but all of it geared towards their interests. And I have a collection that 1/8 of it, if we're lucky, is geared towards their interests. So that's just one sliver of the pedagogy, but that's something to sort of frame the bigger picture of what is missing when we're serving this wide stretch as opposed to concentrating our resources at a particular grade level. If that makes sense. So that's my perspective.
Just, if I may, for 30 more seconds, where I really appreciate Lisa's comments are, you may get to the end of the road and realize there's no money for this. You may get to the end of the road and realize there's no will for this at the leadership level. You may get to the road and realize there is a large silent majority out there for sixth grade at Marion Cross. But where I think you're right, there was a feeling, and I think where I was struggling as a board member, there was a feeling that we just could not continue to have the discussion. And I'm like, boy, if you think this is tough, if the various tax scenarios come true, we're going to be involved in much more difficult conversations than whether you move the sixth grade to RMS. And so like, we have to be able to talk about things, even though like the desire is to be like, no, like we need to preserve comedy over everything else. But appreciate your comments.
Sure.
One, as someone who really loves having the sixth grade here, having done a tour of RMS last year with some of our sixth graders, we are only like at the tip of the iceberg of what we can provide for kids here compared to the other side of the river, which is really eye-opening. And even just a facility that's built for sixth, seventh, and eighth graders makes a huge difference. Also, number-wise, just so we deal with a little bit of facts, for the next 8 years, our largest class would be 51 and our smallest 30. So we're talking on average about 40 kids that would go across the river. And then just from past experience being in a district that did some changing of kids from school to school and reconfiguring, one of the things that was really helpful to take the feelings out of it, because people have a hard time with change, and sometimes that difficulty with change overshadows what's good for kids. And one of the things we found helpful was to have a consultant come in and do space studies in the buildings and look at like this building, this is the capacity based on regulations of how many kids can fit in a room in square footage. And that kind of helped bring the conversation from this is my building and this is how we use it to this is a building with this capacity and this is the potential of it. And maybe that would help move this conversation along a little bit. I think we all get invested in what we have and love what we have, and sometimes to the detriment of seeing beyond what we could have. Some thoughts.
Is that sort of thing included in the study that's going to be happening?
Absolutely.
And what is the timeline for that?
We have received our responses to the RFQ, and Jamie, do we have a meeting set up with either of the respondents? I know I've seen an email trail back and forth. Jamie?
Yeah, I don't have that nailed down yet, just because of
Okay.
everything else going on right now. We
But it
both
is in the
need to
works.
have a date and time that works with both of them.
Mhm.
So we can try to prioritize that now that, you know, schools are open, 7 projects are halfway done or almost done. Yep, we'll get right on that. And I just posted the thing you wanted.
So I'm trying to understand, is this like a months long process
Oh,
or are you
a year.
The CIP itself will take a while. It's a long-term project.
It was
So-
9 months to a year, Lily, for the,
Okay, thank you.
to have the report completed. But it was in stages. And so
And
I'm
can-
thinking when I looked at that part, I think that was probably stage 3. I don't honestly remember, and I don't have it with me. But yeah, I think it was 9 months to a year to complete from kickoff. And we had asked them for dates that would begin like this September. So we're not too far off timeline that we had requested for the RFQ/P. And then it was in phases. And I think that portion of what we requested was a phase 3 item.
Is it possible to move it up in the timeline if the board?
I don't know. That's a question for them. Yep. So we'll add that to our question list.
And can I continue? I just wanted to say thank you to Jillian because my daughter is in sixth grade and she was so excited to know there is like the special sixth grade section. And she has read the 2 Heartstopper books in 2 nights. So thank you for having age appropriate stuff there.
All right. Other discussion on this, I guess.
So I think the moral of the story is that budgetarily, I don't think this is gonna be an item that we're prepared for the coming,
No.
this budget. I think we're looking 2 cycles.
Yeah,
That's kind of what I learned tonight, then, the new information
Yeah.
is that it's actually maybe thankfully, because of what has percolated up over the past several months, that it's made it at least into the study process as far as one of the things that they were looking at. I guess the question now is do we do anything formal based on the fact that I think Jay's right, that there is gonna be very limited appetite to do anything budget-wise until we have the space study done. I guess, do we do anything formal here, or do we kick the can down the road? Jay?
I mean, back to the suggestion of having maybe a status quo and a couple other options, I mean, if we're gonna have the facilities study, the building use study conducted by someone else, by the time we engage this outfit and they start to do their work, even if we put it into phase 1, I don't hold a whole lot of hope that they would be able to do that kind of work. If we decided we wanted to move 40 kids or 50 kids over to RMS next year, there are other options. I mean, we could bring in a modular classroom that could be used for a special or something and then accommodate more students within the building. There are things we could do, but I think we'd be doing that either on our own, because again, having this, we looked at Truex Collins, and there's one other vendor, I can't remember they have an acronym or a name. Without having them engaged in helping lead us through the process, I think we then have to farm it out to somebody else to get that kind of professional help.
So I don't think it's worth pushing this through. I think it's worth maybe coming back in the spring and listening to you and maybe Tim talk about space aside, pedagogically, what is this gonna look like? What do you think would be the benefits and the disadvantages of moving them over? And then let's get through this budget cycle without upsetting Neil any more than it's already gonna upset him. And hopefully at that point, the state will have figured out something that will be maybe a little less dramatic in terms of tax increases, I can dream. But I would say that as long as we're on a track, extending this over 2 years is not a bad thing. Taking our time to listen to Sean and to Tim and to all the other experts in the field so that we can plan this and make it the least disruptive for all of the parties involved, I think would be beneficial.
Not to belabor the point, but so I work in the Northeast Kingdom. It's been a sad summer in the kingdom. You know, a couple monster floods, you know, and then in North Country high schools going back to school in tents with PCB problems. And, you know, I don't envy them. But I do know one of the things I learned during COVID is that Vermonters can change really, really fast. If we had a PCB problem, we'd figure out how to move 6th graders to RMS in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I still would love, and this is just me, hey, if you had to do it, like next year would be the expensive version and the smaller version. And you're probably right. Either there'll be limitations that make it impossible, or it's just more prudent to fold into the study. But when it's so easy to kick the can down the road year after year. And so I would still be open to that. I obviously I can't, without colleagues' support, there's no way for me to push that. So just something I was thinking about while prepping for this meeting.
And for me, what would be beneficial is if we have this discussion in spring with Tim and Sean, and I would say like March, maybe like right after the budget. Not May, when we're all ready to bolt. But March, what would be helpful to me would be to have as much of a space study done as possible. Like whether it's Tim and Sean, you know, looking at the building at RMS and what that might look like, and, you know, maybe the sixth grade goes with the seventh grade, like, I'm not familiar with the building, but I just, you know, if there were ways to flip flop things around, and if that could work, and plus, as much of the study, you know, like, if they had preliminary, this is insane, and you're right, it's $1.5 million, no matter, you know what I mean, no matter how you slice it, that would be good information to have, but, I just would want, I kind of feel like both conversations, when possible, should happen at the same time. And then we can add the money to it based upon that.
I think it would be really exciting to involve the sixth graders
Yes.
in whatever, all along these phases, they have opinions. They are eager for people to listen to their opinions and for their ideas to matter. And I think this is right for that, and for them to understand the political process that goes into making these decisions. So I would just encourage however that can happen, and I'm happy to be involved in that in the capacity of the library, but I hope that the board is open to the students taking part in the conversation.
And I would just add to that the RMS students as well. Like, I would want the opinion of the sixth graders over there and the seventh and eighth graders who have already gone through it and probably have a different perspective than those who don't know what that might look like.
Again, I think I may be on an island here. I would just warn us that, you know, I mean, this is all great, and I guess, you know, yes, when we involve people and you look at a shiny new thing, it's gonna look great, and I guess I just don't know if it's how necessary it is. I mean, you hear Michael make comments about what's going on elsewhere in the state of Vermont, and here we are, you know, trying to put our kids over into the Richmond Middle School because it's, I mean, the kids in sixth grade here, having seen 3 kids go through sixth grade, I think they've had an excellent experience. I think we have to keep in mind that too, that, you know, this is, I'm also just cognizant, I guess, that there's a point when it's like, is this parents that are really saying, I want what's best for my student, I don't want them to be one-upped by the kids over in Hanover, or is this a real, you know, do we really have it where we're not delivering, you know, a good product for our sixth graders, because I think that the product being delivered for the sixth graders is pretty good. I mean, yes, there's definitely, if you look at the library here versus what they have at RMS, and if you look at some other, like, you know, there are things that are gonna be better over there, but we live in Norwich. There's Neil.
I think I'm in favor of, I guess, what would be considered a go slower approach. I'm not convinced that, investigating like a quick move is in our best interest. I do think the quality of the program that we have here at MCS is, I mean, it's admirable and enviable, from many other school districts in the state of Vermont. So it's not like we're giving a bad education to our sixth graders. I think we're doing an excellent job here. But I do see the potential benefits of making a move and having these students attend RMS at that grade level. I have some concerns though, and I do think that the capital improvement plan, I think, is the right approach to start to take a look at some of these things. But I think that there are costs beyond that that we need to consider, that I'm not sure that we've got a good handle on. With a move of an entire grade to a different building, we're talking about a reduction of staff at this building. We need to figure out and run those numbers, because taxation in Vermont is based on how much you spend per student. If we've got fewer number of students, but we still need to maintain a certain number of staff here, we need to be careful that we're not actually raising our overall cost per student by doing this move. That could result in higher taxation in the community of Norwich. And those are numbers that I would not expect the capital improvement folks to be able to run. That's not their bailiwick. They don't know how to do that, but it's work that we could do. And I want to be very careful because with the reduction in staff also comes this notion of last in, first out, right? So I want us to be mindful of which staff we would be potentially losing by making a move like this, and not knowing that I could actually guarantee that they would have a set position across the river, because we can't guarantee that. So I think this needs to be investigated, but I would argue not for next year. Let's do a little bit of homework on this. I think we could express to our Dresden colleagues that yes, there is some interest here, but nobody wants to move quickly on this. So if those folks are willing to engage with us on this, I think you know, the capital improvement plan and then some thoughtful work around the budgetary aspects of this would be helpful.
Then we would just dig a little bit deeper on it, so obviously we would be getting more of an expense as a ratio, right, coming from the RMS budget into our budget, right? Because we'd be having 40 kids as the divisor over there.
Correct, so the percentage split of Hanover and Dresden.
So we would be getting a
a
higher
little bit.
budget allocation from Dresden,
But we could also impact our per pupil costs here in this building.
because we'd be losing,
We'd be losing 40 students from
40.
Marion Cross, and unless you had a commensurate number of reductions in staff on the expense side of the equation, the local spending per student could actually go up. I mean, it could go down as well too, depending on how it's staffing, but you're not gonna get rid of a specials teacher just because you had 40 kids go across the river.
so we could be spending more, right, because we would be getting that budget allocation over there as spending as well,
Yeah.
right, which we'd be getting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's some real numbers here, some real scenarios that I wanna do a little bit of homework on. Just so that we got a decent handle on what business, it's beyond just the facilities costs.
One of the issues with what we were given last year was that it had all the gross staffing costs at RMS with no offsets from reduction in staffing costs at MCS, right? 'Cause you wouldn't have sixth grade teachers here any longer. If there's no sixth grade here, that cost would migrate. But your point's well taken about getting sharpening our pencils and trying to get into it.
And as far as expanding more pre-K, is all of a sudden now, I mean, what do we have right now for kids in pre-K versus we have?
Max, we have 36.
Sorry, 36, so, I mean, I would want to be careful about saying, okay, let's just expand more pre-K, because then we're gonna look at like, it's gonna look like a pre-K kindergarten around here versus an elementary school, if we suddenly have, 70 pre-K kids in the school. I mean, it's gonna be a much different atmosphere. I'm just saying that we have to be a little bit careful of saying, well, there's some budget opportunity there, but because we can expand our pre-K and maybe fill the sixth grade, what we lose, but that also, I think we need to think carefully. And
Sorry, I know, Chuck, I will just add one more thing. I also want to make folks on the board are fully aware that we are staring at a potential dramatic change in the funding formula in Vermont. So any decisions that we make today, the calculus around that could be completely different from next year.
Totally right.
okay. So maybe bring us to a close, unless the board members think we need to actually vote on something or have some strict directive. I think at least I'm comfortable that I think we can make a report back to the Dresden board. I mean, maybe I can reach out to Kim and just say that we'll have a kind of a summary of what we discussed here at the next Dresden meeting, just so they're also aware, but I think, yeah, definitely the message has been clear that this is gonna be part of the process, is the evaluation of the consultant process, right? And that I think
We'll go from there.
we kind of go from there, and we kind of, because we're gonna know also more hopefully over the next 6 to 12 months, as far as even what, this commission at the state level is gonna be doing their work and changing around the formulas and stuff, so.
I think that's a fair summary of the discussion. I do think that, you can save everybody 15 minutes at that meeting. If you don't say nobody wants to go fast, that'll force me to raise my hand and say, well, there's one guy. Kind of want to go faster, but it seems like the will of the board is to take it at that speed, so I appreciate the conversation.
And we all asked for something in the spring too.
Yep.
You know, as an update. Spring/March.
All right, we want to move on from there. Obviously, members of the public, feel free to reach out with questions or comments, express interest. Yeah, happy to continue the discussion too here. Okay, we'll move on to our next item. It's the appointing of the AP approvers.
Ooh, so contentious.
Very contentious. I was actually just looking.
Because I thought that we had already done. it.
Yeah, I thought we
Yeah.
just did it.
And then I kept getting the emails.
And I did too. So, you know.
I think I was one of the designated approvers, but I never got tagged.
Jill and I
Yeah.
have ourselves 2 more months of recruiting, so we'll make sure this is approved to do it.
Yeah, I
We
think.
won't
we
have to do it again until
January
2026.
Right, we did this already.
Who are the approvers?
I forget
You
the,
too.
Yes, okay,
the approvers were.
Your table.
got it,
Got it.
fair enough.
Will you let whoever needs to know?
That
know?
was my fault. Good.
Okay, minutes taker. Please be advised that Michael and Lily are the new approvers.
Thank you.
I will let Heather know. Sorry about that. That's my fault.
Okay.
It's all good.
I've enjoyed not having to reply to emails saying yes, I approve.
All right, I want to move on to our last item for discussion, the SBAC testing update.
Yeah, so we need to update our calendar too. It's definitely not the SBAC anymore. So since we've done our second year of VCAP. So this is, so I'm just gonna like kind of tie together what we talked about last spring to some work that was done over the summer and to where we're headed this year. So it's not gonna be long. I'm not gonna get, but I'm happy to answer questions anytime during the presentation. So just a little data review here. This is something I shared last spring. If you can remember, Lucy Hampton was here talking about Dibbles, which is another little screener that we have. And these are some of our goals from the summer of 2023. That's more than a year ago now. I'm not going to really talk about this part. One of the things we really worked on last year was, so now we have a full-time literacy interventionist coach and full-time math interventionist coach and 2 part-times in each of those subjects. So we have a lot of coaching being done at different grade levels, since that was really an emphasis last year, because we're not just trying to say this kid needs help in math, but like how do we improve math instruction to benefit a lot of kids, and also having the tier 2 intervention as well. So the second bullet shows how many kids we're getting some tier 2 intervention, which is more than just the coaching, but all of our kids benefit from the coaching, either from literacy or that was our goal last year, continuing with that goal this year, definitely. Not going to talk about Dibbles, but that was, it's a test that has much more to do with phonetic awareness, and so it's a good. We use iWriting, but that doesn't do as good a job getting compared to reading Dibbles. So Dibbles is really for the younger kids. We are going to do kindergarten through 3rd grade this year, mostly because Vermont really wants you to do that. It's a law that's passed. We could possibly argue that iReady could accomplish that law, but Dibbles does a better job with that. So really it's a screener for reading problems, reading issues, and Dibbles might do that better than and we start 3rd year doing iReady, and I think we use this data really well, just to kind of help us figure out what universal instruction should change in a grade or in a classroom, or what intervention rather should be done with the intervention should be done with the student. And we also have we have a lot, we're trying to differentiate more so when we have small group work or math menu. They can do iReady. It's only about 30 minutes a week of like computer lessons. And it's supposed to be tailored to how they did in the diagnostics. So it's just another small thing that they're able to do, and that's the last bullet there. Not gonna show this last year. We didn't have as much growth last year as the year before, but we're still doing very well. And what's important is not the 107% average, but like how many kids we have below. We really wanna be working towards getting all the kids into the greens. Of course, that means you're at grade level. And there was some good improvement, and this is ELA. And so then I'll just get to the Vermont cap. So this is our new statewide mandated test. It used to be SBAC few years ago. This is our second year doing the Vermont cap. So the kids, all grades 3 through 6, as you can see up there, took this test in math and ELA. And it was good. There's a new company, it was a new platform. It looked the same to the kids, but it's better for reporting, I think. It does not come out as fast as they promised. That's okay. It came out over the summer in mid-July. We're still not, we don't know how the state did. So we don't know how ours is comparing to the state yet. That comes out, I think, in December when the state report card gets published. So just knowing that we've looked at this, we haven't really shared this formally with staff yet, but they've seen results. But we haven't had a formal discussion analyzing this data yet. We definitely have noticed some things like our math in 4th grade there. I'm sure you all noticed that. It's something that, we've talked a lot at data team meetings and in ESP already. So just know that. So that's our overall proficiency. It was pretty much the same as last year. Math, when as a school overall down 1 percentage point, and then ELA also down 1 percentage point, but like more growth in certain grades, especially 6th grade. So that was quite great. We can look at cohorts it's only the 2nd year of the test, but it's nice to see improvement test. They're getting ready for middle school, and we have 90% of our kids, 85–90% of our kids proficient. It was nice. Yeah.
Just a couple questions on this. On the VT cap, I know you're waiting for like state of Vermont results. Do individual students eventually see their results?
Yeah, we'll send them. We're going to have them ready for students at back to school night.
Got it.
And then we'll be mailing this. Current 7th graders will be mailing this up.
And I know that we changed tests and everything, but did you see a similar pattern in previous results when you tracked that 4th grade cohort?
No.
Okay.
No, that was a surprise this year.
And do you and your colleagues have a hypothesis about why that score is the way it is?
We're focusing on like universal instruction a little bit more, but yeah, we do have some hypotheses about that.
Okay. Any that you're willing to share, or?
I mean, I think it's so like
individual.
It's just a kind of, yeah,
That's fair enough.
Yeah, because we don't really know yet.
Yeah.
And we don't really want like the 4th grade teachers to feel like it's their thing, because it could have been, it's a variety of variables going in there. So, but when you see 4th grade, I think people take it's a 4th grade teacher thing. So that's not how I want to see that. It's a cohort thing. Then we got to work on some particular areas. And
one thing, I'll just speak to that. One of the great things about 6 years into Greg and I being here is that already this week we've met with teams that we ended the year last year looking at results and having each team say, okay, with the kids that we worked with this year, here are the things that we see the next year's teacher needing to implement for them to be successful. And this week we met with teams to go through and look at that, look at what their colleagues shared and say, okay, this 4th grade has these gaps, and this is what the 5th grade teacher needs to start doing the math to catch them up, which I think is pretty spectacular. The other thing I'll note is in the conversation about 6th grade, I kind of look at that 6th grade year as like the result of all of our work at Marion Cross School, and I think we can be proud that 85% of our 6th graders are proficient and literacy and 90% in math. That's not something a lot of places can say.
Yeah,
I think it speaks to Garrett's point that we do have a great program for sixth graders.
Yeah, especially on level four, so if you didn't know, level 3 is proficient, level 4 is exceeding proficiency. So we have a lot of, one of the challenges in our school is to not teach to a higher bar that's the grade level. Like you have kids that are at level 4, and it's hard to be reaching the kids in level 2 sometimes. You have to differentiate a lot, and it's a challenge, but it's a better challenge that way than so that's our Vermont CAT performance from last year. That was great. And this is something that we've reported in the last couple of years. Just, if you see on the far left, this is for math. And remember about 80% was, I think that was 80%, yeah, 80% proficiency school-wide. And so I did break it down into categories, and we do know that some of these categories have very few kids in them, but they have enough that I felt comfortable putting it out there. And so it's all graded through 3 through 6. So we see our 504 kids are the same as the school. NW is non-white. And all those categories, except for economic disadvantage, have gone up pretty significantly. So they're not IT for states. So some of the other categories are doing better, and those are also the categories that get a lot of tier 2 intervention. If you're an ELL student in the ELL program, 504, we have plans for those kids. And there's no plans for non-white kids, obviously, but unless they fall into another category. Those are how we break that down. And then this is our ELA. So, sort of surprising some, that our ELL students are higher than our school average, like that. So those categories, we're gonna keep tracking, and we can identify individual kids and things like that, that we talk in small groups, or cohorts as needed. So this is what we presented last spring, is our next steps. We said staff will look at individual student data and class data to determine tier 1 instructional implications. And that's what Sean was just talking about. So we did that at the end of the year, and we met over the summer, a small group of us. And then this week, we started off the year during our education support team time, looking at those documents, and just letting people know, remember, we're gonna do more informational text. That's kind of all the way through. We've also learned that geometry is one of the last units taught in a lot of our math books. So every grade is we need more time for geometry. So that's also been a nice learning, saying, okay, we need to make sure we get to that, or we integrate it throughout the year, or we do math menu, there's maybe geometry things for kids to learn at the same time. So that's been really helpful, and that's all tier 1 for all kids. We met as a data team. Unfortunately, we had some 6 participants. So it was just Sean, Rob, and me. And of course, everyone only went with the one of last year, and they wanted Lucy and Ross there, but we were there, so that was good. So that was our next steps, and then just to kind of let you know that these are the kinds of the questions. So when they looked at their whole grade level, when each teacher, actually when the grade level group of teachers met together in June, when they were really excited to look at data and plan for next year already, these are the kinds of questions. We really want to push what practices in tier 1 instruction math help students be successful. Where did we struggle? What tier 1 do you have as a goal next year? So this year we remind the teaching teams what they said last year, but then we also give them what the previous grade shared as well. So, and all this there's a lot more, it wasn't just these questions, there was a lot of analyzing data that helped get background. So the questions were done. I think, and then this is what our big goal for this year, that we're definitely going to be able to report on, is that you can read it, but our teachers will grow in their capacity to look at and use data to inform instruction and teaching teams as evidenced by self-reflection and PD goals. And this is gonna be a goal maybe for a couple of years. Using data to inform instruction is not something we just do. I think teachers always do it. But sometimes with a systematic way, that's the hard part to do. We really want, and just to be clear, with the measurable part, we're really looking to have some deep discussions and plans to improve students that are economically disadvantaged or ones with IEPs. They can all learn. And we do also, I didn't share this, but we also can track the growth of kids, individual kids and groups of kids. So we can compare like the all kids in the school on average, how they grow, and then how do kids in a subset grow as well. And so we kind of have that, and we have that information as well to show to teachers as we plan. And I think that's really all I was going to share tonight, but answer any questions.
I was looking at, so I was looking at the bar graphs, and that economically disadvantaged group does, it stands out. I saw you've got the goal there. How do you get to the goal with these students?
That's a good question. We work as a team, but besides that, I think a lot of it is awareness. And it's also really important to know that some kids are in a few of these categories, or two. So, well, we're all in two. They could be in, they're all in school and something else, but they could be in three, something like that. So how do we work on that? It is really, a little bit of this could be more like if you have a goal like that, like being more purposeful in planning and tracking growth throughout the year, and not just looking at the end of the year. And just being more aware of it. And then with data collection, being able to make better plans and like the mini goals to get to the bigger goals.
Is any of this an indication that individualized learning plans or differentiated instruction is hard?
I don't know if this indicates that, but it is. It's very hard.
And are we focusing on the right things in terms of professional development and, you know, what we need to get the staff to be able to get those bar graphs up?
So I would say this is it's definitely getting better and better. So for example, in math, like there's always like, well, the goal is there's always like some math menu part, which is differentiation for every student in the class. It's not just a kid with a plan. And so even with kids with plans can be parts of those groups. And the same thing with literacy instruction. So we are, and that's where some of our coaching comes into play, where they can come up with ideas to, not like you need to be in this category to get something, but it's like, how do we do it for everybody? And accomplish goals for those kids at the same time. So it is a different way it looks a lot different than it did 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah, but then, I'm sorry, I mean, are we, is our professional development focused in the right areas if this is the thing that we're trying to fix?
I mean, it always can probably be looked at and tweaked. I feel good about it. I feel good about where we're going. Like, for example, looking at science curriculum, we are talking about all this differentiation that you can do.
I'll just, since it's over here in this corner, I'll just add to that. I think you have to think about professional development in a couple different ways. So there's the professional development that teachers do on their own. So Sarah came and shared her professional development. And then there's the professional development that Greg and I guide here that fits, I think is targeted towards this. So we have a kind of a nice mix of, we had someone come during in-service to talk to us about students with attention deficit disorder. How do you approach students? And it's fascinating how over time kids have changed because of what's in front of them all the time and how they respond. So we did professional development around that, so the teachers can start to shift their instruction to fit kids that are now coming to school that have different profiles than they did 15 or 20 years ago. So I think we balance this. Teachers take some professional development that might help them in the content area, whereas we might provide something that we see more targeted towards our school goals.
And one other thing I'd add is one of our other big goals is a lot of these restorative approaches that are integrated into our PBIS. And all of that, making sure every kid feels like they belong and every kid is heard. Like that's gonna help kids that need that extra help with those relationships. So we're doing that partially for this. You know, it's not just to have a circle, it's to have kids that don't feel like they ever get a chance to talk, to have a way of being heard. And so it's kind of like everything we're doing, but it's not just one program that'll help us do it.
I think it's been a good chunk of my career in itself. And the state hopefully will stick with this and we'll actually have some reliable and consistent data that we can start to draw some conclusions and actually measure whether, I mean, it's entirely possible if you look at that cohort of students that are represented in an economic disadvantage, they may be experiencing great growth year to year, we just don't know. So the more years we pile up with this data, we'll be able to look at those trends across cohorts, which will be super helpful.
And we can look at kids in those, with our iReady data, how they've grown through the year.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a little bit better for that particular category than what it's showing on this. Because we've already seen it. I'm pretty excited about like our overall data. We'll never we're unless everyone's proficient, then we'll be. So you just gotta keep working on it. And that's, I mean, realistically, I think that is the goal. You know.
And just a question, I'm kind of drilling down a little bit on what Neil was saying. In particular for the economically disadvantaged group, I'm assuming that the teams are working with like the counseling staff or social workers just to make sure that material needs are being met, which could impact growth and learning. So,
yeah.
Okay. So that's part of the
as much as
discussion.
we can, yeah.
Okay.
I just give a plug to the schedule committee because one of the things that they looked at was making sure that teams had common planning time so that teacher teams can meet together with their special educator that's part of that team and our guidance counselor can come in.
Right.
That was part of the thinking was that you can't do this in isolation.
Right.
You need all those different parties coming together.
I mean, I have visions when I was on the board of the Norwich Public Library, coming out of board meetings at 10 o'clock at night and seeing kids who didn't have internet service in their mom and dad's car with the engine running to keep warm with their laptops, you know, getting the public library internet. And again, that may not even be an economically disadvantaged, that may just be live way too far out of town, but that was actually striking how many people were out there at like 10 o'clock at night posting the library stuff from their cars because the library was closed. So,
Yeah.
How do you define the economically
Oh, that's a good
disadvantaged?
question. So that's really something that is hard. And so what we did this time, this is easier for me at least, is we took the state has this information somehow through census, I guess, is what Robin Steiner was telling me, and they give it to us. So when we get results from students, we get more than just the paper that the parents get. It's got all these categories, and so we are basically, that's what I go with. Because our own system, it's really good in a lot of things, but it's not always accurate. So if they're reporting, if the state's reporting on this, then I took that information, then put those kids in iReady in the same groups.
So the state divides it up for you and says these are the scores of the, however we define.
These are the individual kids that's in these different categories. I mean, we put in the ones that we had before.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the ELLs as well. Sure, that's tricky.
With the free and reduced lunch program that we're all mandatorily now, we report that data to the state, and there's also something called a direct certification list, which I'm assuming is what they're using to generate that.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one.
Yeah, so that was gonna be my question. So the numbers that we're getting to the state, are they matching what we reported for free and reduced lunch?
So just to be totally honest, not always, because I think our free and reduced, especially with this new law, we're not getting the paperwork that we used to get.
Oh, families are not returning it.
Right.
There's no need to, we try, we ask them to,
Alright. Yep.
but they don't.
So yeah, that makes me question where the heck's the state getting their data from?
It's called direct cert, so if you're registered for any kind of support services through the state, you're on a list, and it's called a direct certification list, and that's.
So these tie, so we don't know if these really tie with our, but our student tax. Because obviously there's like
Right,
ELL and.
It's hard to, I mean, Greg would know better, it's hard to tell, right, because once we went to universal meals in Vermont, then there was no, I think, really compelling requirement for those families to submit those free and reduced lunch forms, which is what we used previously to identify the kids that met that categorization. And so now when everybody gets a free meal, it's paid for by your tax dollars, but a free meal, right? Then, you know, what do I get for submitting the form? But people stop submitting the form, which meant we stopped having the data. And so it's hard to know whether or not we've captured all of those students in that bucket or not.
But the state's giving us our EM.
Based
they're
on
using
based on a different mechanism for, you know, identifying those students that would be in that bucket, because previously it was based on that form, and now it's no longer based on that form, so it's kind of like, I would think an apples to oranges comparison. You can't compare historical counts against this new one, because they're from a different basis.
So can I interject?
Please, I was hoping you would.
Okay, well, I got my hand up, but everybody's having a good conversation. So, let me lower my hand. There we go. So it's true that we're a provision to schools, so we don't collect free and reduced forms. We do, however, collect household forms. So at Norwich School District, the advantage we may have is that we do collect forms at Richmond Middle School and Hanover High School. So any of the students who have older siblings whose parents are filling out forms, we still get all that information and we put it into our mealtime system and code all of our students accordingly. We receive direct certification notices that use a multitude of different governmental agencies to capture many students. We've never had as many free and reduced designated students in my 8 years of being here as we do now that we've captured. Okay, so even before universal free meals, I'm going to say, you know, absolutely, it's hard to tell because, you know, COVID hit, the world changed, you know, people lost jobs, or although there's a million jobs right now, so whatever. So it's hard to say apples to apples, but I mean, last year, and I took in applications from people, a few. Last year we probably had, oh my God, over 30 students reported. So, you know, that's a lot for us. We've historically never had that many students reporting, you know, so I think the state, as much as we like to question what they're doing, they are taking and vetting that information from many different sources. You know, it's the, I don't know what your program's called in Vermont, I can't remember, but like the Dr. Dinosaur program, or if kids are getting, you know, any kind of assistance at all in a multitude of different realms, they come in on that direct cert list. And again, we also cross-reference all applications from all of our schools in our districts, you know, across to make sure that we're getting all the students' data correctly, because it's important to our grant funding. And to make sure that any of their siblings who maybe aren't getting, whether they're siblings that are blood relative or they're just, you know, siblings from blended families or what have you, that may have different, you know, parental circumstances or situations in, you know, in National School Lunch Program, you know, if if one student is, coded free or reduced for any reason at all, right? That carries to all the other family members, whether they're part-time in the home or not. So there's a lot to it, and I think that we do search it out and make sure. I mean, that was like part of that Title II funding question, right? That we went, the 9s on, me and Robin. But I think you'd be surprised at the amount of data that's being captured.
Well, how we take all that data is that we want to focus on those groups of kids and all individual kids and cohorts to try to improve everything we do. So.
And our folks on staff are very, astute and involved with the kiddos in all of our schools. And so if they think that there's a need that maybe isn't being met, they go the extra mile to reach out with the appropriate forms and or, other places that folks can get help.
Just wanted to give an appreciation to Greg. Part of his job is this whole data management piece, and he does a fantastic job of bringing the data to staff, coming up with protocols for us to discuss data as a staff, and I think has really raised the bar at Mary Cross School. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's a team thing. I think people like it now. It's totally different than it was when we started, when people decided to track our progress if they felt like it. And when we never looked at it, so now people are excited, I think, usually to see how the kids are doing.
What do you call
The
it?
Vermont.
The Vermont caps, that replaces SBAC?
Yeah, okay. This is the second year of that.
And was that required to, or did you want to get rid of SBAC?
No, it's a state.
So the state was the one who did the SBAC.
Yeah.
And do you think that is the testing and everything, is it generally the same or?
It's all aligned to so we have science too, which I didn't put up here, but there's an NGSS for science and then the Common Core State Standards for math and there's a writing component. So that way it's all very, very similar.
Right.
The way it's given to the kids is slightly different. But.
And Vermont did away with SBAC, is that what?
Yeah, I can't really exactly remember why.
But we should we should now be calling it the Vermont cap instead of SBAC.
Yeah, they're just like assessment data, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments or questions? Thank you guys for
Welcome.
all that work. Okay, I think now we can move into our consent agenda. I think we'll do the A through E, and then we'll do it after each individual. Does that make sense?
It does. Can I just, I will just mention it's, when we get to approval of the minutes, I just noticed in there were a couple of acronyms that were, misidentified. I think it was like AOB instead of AOE, and COA instead of CI. Minor changes, but we just want to take a look at those.
Processing more confusing, really. Scrivener there.
Yeah, Scrivener.
Make up our own acronyms. All right, do I have a motion for A through E by consent? Lily?
I move to approve items B, C, D, and E by consent.
Sorry, second. Lisa, second that. All those in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Do I have a motion for item F? Michael?
I would move to approve the VSBIT proxy or certificate of authority as presented, with the representative being Neil Odell.
Lisa seconds. All those in favor?
Making it consistent.
And that's all unanimous as well. And then our item G. Lily?
I move to approve Neil Odell as the VEHI proxy or certificate of authority as presented.
Second.
Michael seconds. All those in favor? That's also unanimous. Okay, to our communication report. It starts off with mine. Again, thanks everyone for all the hard work to get the school open. I know Jamie's been working around the clock and everything did get off without a hitch here, I think, when all the kids showed up. And same with Sean and all the custodians that got everything ready, because I think last time we were here, it was just looking, like you can move around the building. And the teachers and whatnot, I know in my family, I think everyone's, this is probably the low, because it seems like you're always ready to go for a great, exciting Labor Day weekend, and everyone comes home on Friday, and you realize that they're absolutely exhausted, and no one really wants to do too much for Labor Day weekend, because we're so tired of the first 3 days of school, so I think everyone's coming out of that now. The VSBA meetings, I think, so just really quick here, I think that, so we have the resolutions, I was just pulling up the thing, I just want to make sure everyone is aware of this, so the proposed resolutions is on the 12th, and actually, I think the woman emailed me and asked me if I wanted to attend that, just to make sure.
And then she reached out to me and asked if I would do it.
Okay.
And I said, yes.
Okay.
I hope I did not overstep.
I'll try to attend that too. So there is a webinar for the VSBA proposed resolutions on the 12th, which is next week sometime. And we, as you all know, we did put in our tax rate one, and Neil did say that that one got a thumbs up to recommend, right? To recommend.
The Resolutions Committee met, gave a recommendation of pass that went on to the VSBA board, and the VSBA board agreed with that, so we will show up in the packet for the annual meeting with a recommendation to pass.
All right, and then just another reminder that, as we've said before, the business meeting's on the 17th of October, so that does come up quick, and I think Ryan was probably sending emails out for signing up if people want to go.
So a little bit of a difference this year. So the annual business meeting typically was held in person at the conference. That is not happening this year. This year, the annual business meeting is online only, so Zoom.
I did not realize that.
And we've shortened the conference down to basically like a day and some change. So there's a banquet dinner on that Thursday night with some student performances, or student work exhibitions. And then the conference actually is just a one-day conference on Friday
Okay.
versus.
Oh, versus the business meeting, which is,
The business meeting used to be included at the end of the day on Thursday.
that's being done.
It's gonna be
But there's
all-
still a conference in person.
So the conference in person, but shortened.
Shortened, okay. I do recommend, I mean, having been to it last year, it is kind of, it's definitely interesting. I mean, you can go to the different tracks. I know the keynote last year she was awesome. The one that gave the talk about how,
The one that I misintroduced I asked her just before I introduced her how to pronounce your last name, and then immediately pronounced it the wrong way.
she was phenomenal to listen to, and I still quote some of the stuff that she talked about as far as the religious schools getting into our public school system and whatnot. Anyway, I digress. So that's all I had for my update here. Back over to Sean for the principal's report.
All right, so you have my written report. I just want to highlight a couple of things. First, enrollment, we're at 325 students. You can see how they break down numbers wise. And I just wanted to reiterate what a great start to the school year. Even though playground isn't quite ready, we still have workers in and out of the building. It's been pretty seamless. The workers, the crews that are here are so great, and they're considerate about our time and when kids come in and out, which is fantastic. And we have an amazing staff here at the Marion Cross School, and I'm impressed with how flexible the staff are with just going with the flow. We had a whole different plan for how recess was going to work based on thinking we would have 2 playground spaces, and we didn't. And we just made it work, and it's not a big deal. And just having workers in and out, sometimes the floor vibrates down there for long periods of time, but we just gotta go with it. And I think that just speaks to teachers who know kids and know what they have for resources. So when the 4th grade floor is vibrating underneath, they go out to the forest and do some learning outside. And I think it's just impressive how the staff is working cohesively. And I just will note that we are off to a faster start, I think, as far as talking about what kids need, having data from last year to use this year, and putting some plans in place for some of our kids who may struggle or in some of those categories that need to improve. And I couldn't be happier with that. If anyone has questions on anything else from my report, or anything in general.
Appreciated the composting update.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Do you think the change in the lunch line will result in less food waste, I wonder?
It is resulting in less, I'll talk about that since you brought it up. So I go to lunch.
Having
every day.
eaten the mac and cheese from the presentation when they were here, wanted the benefit of the results.
Yeah.
That's right.
Having our food cooked here, as we all knew, makes a huge difference in quality. And having more time for kids to think about what they're going to eat.
Yeah.
Even though we had an awful program last year, fault of our schedule, we had to fit so many kids in a small amount of time. And a lot of times we had to serve them because just to get them through the line and be able to have the next group. And we accounted for that this year and left time so that when kids go up through the line, they can talk a little bit with the person on the other side and make some choices about what they want. And we're seeing this year that instead of having 2 5-gallon buckets every day of food, we've been down to some days a half a bucket. And I think that's because some of the kids are, they have good communication skills when we allow them, and they are quite capable of saying, you know, I don't want the meatballs, but I would love to have these other parts of the meal. And then they eat what they want. So I think it makes a big difference. And it has made the feel of lunch calmer because we're not pushing kids through to eat their food. There's just some time to settle, which helps with compost piece.
I would say please thank the 6th graders. I'd love a follow-up meeting with them to maybe bring us something better than the cold macaroni and cheese they brought us last time. And I think it'd be great for them to realize that a lot of the changes they recommended, you've implemented in their work.
Really good.
Just, if I just mention one more thing, I think that what worked really well under Sean's leadership was that we had our 5 in-service days at the beginning of school. And I feel like we were able to do some pretty great PD. I also have some people in their classrooms, some were not allowed in their classrooms until like the day. But it just felt calmer to get everything started. It didn't feel hectic, and I think that could be felt by all the kids as we started school. Everyone was ready. We'd had all our talks already, so that was a really great idea, I think. I know you got feedback, but I'm sure.
All right, on to Jay for superintendent's report.
Actually, I think is Robin on?
She is.
I'm here.
I'll defer to Robin first.
Robin, would you like to go through anything in your report in particular?
Sure, I think everything is there and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. We've been preparing for the science PD and I've been working with the ELA committee. All good things happening.
Do you have any questions? I know, yeah, I did see at the end there that our grants are not looking so good this year, so.
No, but we did have approval this week finally. So that's good.
Okay, perfect.
But we have lost our Title I funding and we've been reduced significantly in Title II and Title IV.
Right.
Yeah.
And those are all need-based, right?
Yes, Title IV, we always get a minimum of the minimum amount, which is $10,000.
Right. What did we get last year for Title I?
Title I last year, I think it was 22,000 when we started the year, but then they added more into our Title I funds as the year progressed. So we ended up getting an additional, I think we ended up with close to $40,000 in Title I last year.
And that's going to zero.
Yes, and that's gone to zero. Now we could add to our Title II and Title IV funds as the year progresses. Sometimes that happens if there are other funds available. So that could happen again, but we'll wait and see. We're doing some good things with the Title II funds this year. We are funding the principals training for Sean and Greg. And continuing with our science PD. And so we're doing some positive things with that funding, which is good.
Is there anything that will miss from the, I mean, 40 is, it's not a lot, but when you start doing our budgets, it actually is a lot for those of us that are on the table trying, slim the budget down. Are we gonna lose anything from not having that 40? Like anything?
We actually funded a half position last year with the Title I funding. We funded a half interventionist position. So we were able to fund that through the budget this year, fortunately, but that was one of the losses that we had. So we could have funded additional interventionists if we had had that funding.
Right. Anything else for Robin? Jay, do you wanna do?
I do have a little to report. The board gave me a task back in June to look into the feasibility of us allowing staff to enroll out-of-district students as a way for us to retain some of the just wonderful folks that we've been able to add to our staff over time. I interviewed two nearby districts, relatively nearby districts, one in Vermont, one in New Hampshire, Orange East Supervisory Union and Lebanon. Lebanon just adopted this policy, in fact, last June, when we discussed it. OESU has had it in place for a while now, two different approaches. OESU did it by contract with their teachers association, and Lebanon chose to do it by policy. OESU didn't really do any research with their legal teams. They just sort of adopted it and they're just moving ahead. It doesn't really cause them much in terms of any kind of complication because not many folks have taken advantage of it. And they required staff to sign up in Lebanon, and they say likewise, they just don't have too many people that actually took advantage of it. So it hasn't created any undue burdens on their budgets. But there were several caveats that we discussed when we had this conversation, and that I think it's just prudent to consider. We wanted to make sure that in considering a policy like this, we look at it not just from the standpoint of foregoing tuition, but also we want to make sure that we don't have to add staff to accommodate students from out of district that might come. We want to make sure that we're aligned with rules regarding special education. And we wanted to have the option for us to make changes if necessary, depending on budgetary pressures. And also, if we have students that pose significant challenges from a behavioral perspective, we want the ability to say, well, this isn't working out. All of those provisions are part and parcel of the Lebanon policy, which they had drafted with the help of the law firm that they use. That law firm now has a Vermont attorney as well, and I worked with them. I gave them the considerations that our board shared and had him draft a sample policy for us to take a look at. That's attached in the executive content because it is still a draft. It's not ready for public viewing at this point. And I would love to know if the board wants me to proceed with this, because what I would then do is bring you a draft policy for your consideration on the first read at some point in the future. I do believe, based on just our own experience, having lost several outstanding teachers because they had situations that arose that were more advantageous to their families. I think if we're careful, I think if we make sure that and then again, I would absolutely advocate for doing this by policy, not by contract. Number one, I think it's more equitable because it'd be open to any staff. And also it wouldn't be subject to negotiation. It'd be the board's decision solely. And we would be able to monitor it to see if there was an impact in a negative way in any way, and we'd be able to make that change on the fly. So I do think that it's probably worth us engaging in at least a pilot, try this as we move forward. And I know just from the leaves that we've had to accommodate recently, that we've got folks that have young families and are young growing families here on staff. And anything we do to support them and keep these great teachers doing the work they do, I think would be helpful, especially if it doesn't cost us extra. and we were able to accommodate them. You asked for a recommendation, and that's my recommendation.
And it does look like, we do get credit for the ADM, so that was one consideration.
No, we do not, the district of residence retains the.
Sending
Yeah,
district.
sending district, yeah.
Okay, so we would not get the ADM. Okay, sorry, I was not reading that.
There is some question about special ed. In New Hampshire, it's written into law that the district of residence, regardless of whether the person voluntarily tuitions to another district, retains responsibility for the cost of a free and appropriate public education. I apologize for the acronym in my report, but I have both Brett and our attorney just double checking to see what that is. I do believe in Vermont that if the district is not a tuitioning district, that they could tell the parent that we can provide that service and we're not willing to pay for the free and appropriate public education at the receiving district, which would put us in a position of having to decide whether we would then provide that. What we do now with private tuition requests is that they essentially sign a form saying that they waive their child's right to services under IDEA. The other thing we do is if we're already providing services and we have a learning specialist available and accommodate the additional students, anything that's not extraordinary expense, we simply cover it right now. So that's something that's maybe a fine detail that we'll get some more feedback on. I can share whatever my findings are with you at our next meeting.
So because it would not be part of the contract and policy, because we don't get credit for the ADM, this is really, we gotta think about this more, is it would be retentive rather than any sort of. I think some of us are thinking, well, there is a benefit here, so if someone had kids in the system, there's value to that from a teacher perspective, but the value is really gonna be more retentive rather than anything compensation wise or in lieu of type of thing.
The board also has, sorry.
I know, I just want to make sure I understand the issue. When I read Jay's material and hear you talk about it, it really is designed as a recruitment, employee relations and recruitment and retention strategy. It doesn't help in other sort of financial mechanics ways. It's purely at employment, recruitment and retention.
If we do it by policy versus trying to get into negotiations.
The other thing I do want to remind, we also talked about the fact that this doesn't necessarily have to be, we just grant full tuition. If the board chose to provide a discounted tuition or wanted to make some other provision, it could. It just what I've been able to find so far is that we legally can pursue this if we'd like, and we can fine tune it and work through the policy development process and tweak it how you'd like.
I guess I just want to clarify, I think what I heard Garrett say was that this would not be a recruitment tool.
No, it would be a recruitment
Okay,
tool,
so
but
it's,
not
you
a-
just said
to Michael
just
said, I
retention,
think it
so
would
okay.
There'd be really no financial.
Right.
I mean, because we're not getting the ADM and it's not part of a contract, so therefore you couldn't say, well, you're
Right.
getting paid X and you're
Okay.
actually getting value for this.
Okay, I just was confused because I do actually see it as a recruitment tool. When you said it was just retention, I was like, well, why wouldn't it also be
Or
recruitment? Okay. I just thought maybe it would only be for the people that were already here, and I just was like, I don't know if we can do it that way. Yeah, that didn't feel right to have it be only for the, the teachers that are currently in the building. It felt like it should be for anyone who's hired here. And I just also wanted to add, I appreciate the line there that you put, Jay, about appropriate protections for students in the event that we have to reverse this. Like I would like to avoid those conversations about, removing a student again. Those are not fun, so thank you.
And actually, let me just ask one more question for you, so, and we could because of policy, we could also think about whether we do it for kids even through grade 3 or something. It does seem like the Melanie Farrell, some of the real issue is when the kids are really little and they can't drop them off. But once the kids get to 5 or 6 or something, at the end of the day, you can, I don't know, our 6th grader, would happy getting here at 7 o'clock if the doors allow it, so. We could make it just subject to a younger group of kids or something, I guess, if it was becoming a financial impact. Anyways, Neil,
I was just gonna say, I suggest that you bring this draft forward for a first reading at the next board meeting, and I don't know, only because of confusion, whether or not we have a Norwich Policy Committee or.
I mean, it's me, I guess.
So I think in that case, I think it's fine rather than having it go through the
Yeah.
policy committee to just have it come to the board at the next meeting for a first read and we can dig into it a little bit then.
I very much support Neil's recommendation, and I just want to make sure in reading Jay's materials, to the extent you were speaking to your colleagues in Lebanon about this, that means if the other boards that we are on wanted to adopt a similar policy, there's no obstacle to doing it with New Hampshire schools as well, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Would it be helpful if I surveyed our staff to see numbers wise what we're looking at over the next few years for people who may take advantage of this? You know, off the top of my head, I can think next year it may have an impact of 4 students in the pre-K through 2 range. But I could get us some numbers just so you have an idea.
That'd be very helpful, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, Jay, thank you very much for moving so quickly on that. And
Yes.
just a thorough
Great.
response on that.
Excellent.
It's a big thing that we obviously prioritized in the spring when we learned about kind of how serious this issue was and could be. So I think we've caught back up here quickly and are back on track. All right. Sorry, moving on here. That's it for me, right?
That's it for me.
All right, thank you. So Jamie, do you have anything you'd like to talk live on here?
Well, I posted a lot of information. I thought we had already posted, but apparently not, the 22-23 audit finalized. Remember, this is 2 years back, okay? No surprise issues. No findings really at all. And so the surplus that we had used as a carry forward for the budget that we are entering into now, which is 24-25, because it's used on a 2-year lag. We had projected it to be 198,000, and after being audited, the actual is 215,000. So that's nice that it was a little bit higher and not lower. So that just means we'll be carrying, about 17,000 more than we thought we were into this budget year. You can take a look through that. If you have any questions, just email me. I'm happy to answer them, and I'll, blind CC the rest of the board. I've always also given you updates on where our projects are at. It's all in writing, so I'm not going to read through it for you. The boiler project is the one that's still in the building. They sent over an email update today of where they're at, what they've accomplished, and what the schedule is moving forward. Looks like they are doing well and hope to fire off the new ones around the 11th. So that's great. We're also working on the permit application for the recycling shed. On the back property. I spoke to the engineer today. And so the school was awarded a grant for that project. The kitchen is in full swing. Alicia is back. I heard she was busy making fresh muffins, like I think the day before the day of school, the first day of school, which is great. We have some small wares coming into the building here in the next few days for the kitchen. And new trays. Something shipped today, 31 pieces of the order shipped today. So it should be in shortly. That'll be exciting for them. Let's see, that's about the reports. Yeah, and the playground the vibration should be done. Hopefully today would have been the last day, maybe tomorrow morning. Tony is outlining all of the locations for each of the 2 vendors that'll be coming in, one on Monday to start putting the equipment in place. They're going to start unpacking it, I think tomorrow or the next day, Friday maybe. And then they'll get that all placed and the port in place folks will be in right behind them. And so that should be up and running. Keep your fingers crossed by hopefully first week of October. I can't wait to see it. And I know that the bathroom upstairs bathroom is almost done. The plumber should be back in, I think, the end of this week or next Monday. And we're just waiting for the doors to come in. They are on order and then that will be operational. And I realized that VSBIT, Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust, who's our insurance company, we received a grant and they have a new staff room waiting for the door to be delivered from that as well. So a lot going on over there and, you know, just picking out some fencing for this is a review for some of you who were at the last meeting. I apologize. Picking out some fencing to go around the BioClear units and around the tank farm. So we can then landscape it and you won't even know it's there. I think that's it for us.
Jimmy, could you just for maybe my education, we received an email from I think the parent group committee on kind of food. Can you just remind us all kind of the current status of the kitchen and what's been done there? Just because I know it's been a long process. We're waiting for the grease trap, but just to make sure everyone's kind of up to date as far as what we now have as far as capabilities in this kitchen and what we're able to do that's different from last year.
Yeah, the whole thing.
So I just want to make sure like everyone kind of is listening to this or watches this kind of knows. I think we get a lot of questions and people are like, you know, oh, we can't cook here, or oh, the food's bad. I just want to kind of give people a quick overview, like of what we've got now, what is new, other than just everything.
Okay, so we had to put a grease trap in
2 minutes
because
or less.
they wouldn't let us cook on site because our
Right.
septic system wouldn't handle it. So that
Correct.
went in end of July and got hooked up to the BioClear units. So at the same time, we had a brand new dishwasher go in that we got a Vermont grant for. We have a brand new 6-burner stove with convection oven that went in that we had to do some wiring on. That was a grant paid for most of the stove. We have brand new 3-bay sink in the back of the kitchen that's required because you have to have you know, a 3-bay sink for doing all of that work before you put stuff through the dishwasher, pot sink. We have those are the pieces of equipment that were brand new. I think last year we had our big refrigerators and our big freezers already that we had purchased with a private donation that had come in. And so we're fully operational. We're cooking all food on site now. We were not able to do that ever. This is the first time. And so, you know, the operation is totally different now. Because obviously the food is, you know, it's batch cooked on site as needed, right? It's not being cooked somewhere else and then brought across, you know, 2 miles and then held. So it's a totally different environment. And I think Alicia's very excited and, you know, settling in. She's getting everything put back in its place where it's going to work for her to be able to manage and run the kitchen in the manner that, you know, she feels it should be. We also have a brand new regional food service director and local food service manager. And so we'll be meeting with the parent group here shortly. We just need to get everything opened and, you know, running. And then we can start talking about, you know, changes to menus that will fit within the guidelines of that National School Lunch Program.
That parent group program, Jimmy, so they're actually they're the ones that reached out, so they are actively involved in this.
Well, they're actively involved in the guidelines of National School Lunch Program. So
Exactly, right. But I mean, they're being, but so they're gonna be involved in, there's a meeting coming up where they're gonna be involved in it then.
yes, we have to hold meetings with our local groups. It's part of the requirement of National School Lunch Program. I don't
Right.
know how many, I think it's 2 or 3, I can't remember. We tried to do a third one last year, we couldn't fit it in. You know, and I know they have a lot of great ideas, but, you know, ideas take time to affect and change sometimes, you know, takes a little bit of time to affect. So, but, you know, I think we're moving forward and we've made a lot of progress.
Yeah, no, exactly. Okay, thank you. That's why I wanted to make sure you hit in a moment just to talk through this, just so everyone in the community knows all the progress that has been made, particularly we're talking a lot about food here, but with the 6th grade and the waste and like, I think this year's even better. So, Sean?
Just to give a 15-second little tidbit about what we can do that we couldn't do before. As we're harvesting the garden, this week we were able to make kale chips from our garden. We were able to do refrigerator pickles from our garden. And today there were some stuffed peppers from our garden. And the kids, when they know, when we advertise, you know, this is harvested by the 1st grade and cooked in our kitchen, they love kale chips. They love.
Can we come by and have lunch?
Yeah.
Oh.
But that's just a nice benefit of being able to cook here. We can take the stuff that we grow ourselves.
And that will be one of the next steps that we'll look to try to embark on as time permits, would be the, you know, bringing more local products into the school, as we start purchasing again.
Exactly. All right, well, thank you, Jamie. Any more questions for Jamie? There are none. All right, thank you so much. Any committee reports? I see none. Do we have a need for executive session?
We do not.
Yeah.
You do not, I was gonna say, you don't see anything in there.
Shared.
All right.
These weeks.
All right, I guess this brings us to our adjournment. Do we have anything specific for next meeting that is aware of?
Oh.
If not, reach out to me.
Hold on, your next meeting is scheduled for Rosh Hashanah.
Finance meeting. I guess we will, what's on schedule, let's see the date, next meeting is scheduled for October 2nd. Do we want to make a decision now as far as when we want to do that?
That might be best, just if we can.
When we can pull everyone, do we want to just pull everyone? Because I don't really know what else for other.
Yeah, it would need to look good.
Do we have Brian
Is it-
pull?
So it's sundown on the 1st.
Technically 2 nights.
Yeah,
No, sundown on the 1st would work. I just
Would
didn't
work.
know if we have anything else.
yeah, so that's.
Sundown on the
but the
1st, sorry,
second-
6:30 on the 1st would be fine.
But the 2nd and the 3rd would not.
Yes,
Okay. Just want to be clear.
that,
Yes.
6:30 on the 1st would be okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's appropriate to ask this now, probably should have been at the beginning, but do you want me to go to the PTO meeting on that Thursday? And be the PTO liaison from the school board again,
Oh,
as I have been the previous 2 years.
yeah, we've talked about that. I mean, do we feel like it's worth having a school board person go? I mean, I think
I feel like Sean can cover for us,
if
but
people want to, but I guess I'm kind of like, I mean. Do we have any, I mean, again, I think if you want to go, Lily, great, but I think
Okay.
do we as a board feel like it's something that you want to have make sure that someone's at these meetings?
I feel like some of the things that we've talked about today probably are better coming from a representative of the school board as opposed to Sean.
All right,
Yeah.
So at least for the October meeting, I would like to go and give it up.
so if you'd like to go and give an update, I think, I would.
I think it's helpful to have a school board member there. I know they appreciate it.
Okay,
At least when I was liaison, they were always very happy to see me and hospitable.
Okay, thanks.
okay. Okay, and then as far as actual scheduling, so we'll maybe move it to that Tuesday, or if not, I'm sorry, we'll try to move to the next week.
Good. I'm able to make it on the 1st. I would just be a little bit late.
Okay,
I'm good on the 1st too.
all right, so maybe if Brian, if everyone's,
I'm
I'm okay on the 1st. I
Yeah,
think.
October 1st, that's late, I missed. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
So we just say Brian's work.
yeah,
Do I just do, yeah, you want to just do 7 on the 1st then?
yeah, it'd be perfect.
Okay,
So,
so we'll do 7 PM on the 1st.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, A motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn at 8:44 PM.
Second. Lisa, I guess we'll, do we vote? Yeah, wrong.
Tryman, yes.
Costa, yes.
Odell, yes. but
Chris, yes.
Not required in Vermont.
Not required. All right, all yeses, all unanimous.
Being very thorough.
We stuck the landing.
That's right.
You're all.
It feels
Thank
good
you.
to be able to say that, like, yes, yes.
I gotta go stick to the bed.
Thank you.
Look, I hope the lasagna came out great.
I hope